I might be crazy. Did you know that? Let me explain to you why. There was a big lottery last week, like 1.6 billion, I think.
Yeah.
Powerball. So, in the past, I looked into what happens to Mega Millions. What happens to the people that win? And my research yielded that it's not too good. So I was thinking to myself like this. If I tell you that there is a new roller coaster, it's managed the most unbelievable thing you've ever seen, a unique experience, it's great. And everyone has to go. Only one catch. 1 in 10,000 people die on this ride. It malfunctions, and that's the stats tell us, the 1 in 10,000. Would you go? That's 0.01%. You wouldn't go? 0.01%. Okay.
It's probably real fast.
So 1 in 1,000, for sure you wouldn't go. 1 in 1,000 people die on this ride, you wouldn't go. Okay, 0.1%, okay, fine. If I told you that there's a new mansion you can move into, it's a gorgeous house, it's free, there's a 20% chance that everyone will come down with a deadly disease if you move in. Right? But it's free, no mortgage, gewaldig, and there's four luxury cars also. There's an 80% chance that the family will not make it through the year.
But they will make it.
They will not make it. 80%. 80% they will not. So you wouldn't do that. So the studies seem to show that 80% of the people who win these lotteries, by this one you would have taken home $540 million. I think. That's what you would have taken home. But in Florida, $40 million you save on tax. You can live your whole life on the money you save from the tax that you don't have to pay in Florida. So they say 80% of the people who win these lotteries end up ruining their lives. They end up, everyone expects them to give them various presents, and the third cousin wants $1 million. Whatever.
That sounds low.
What?
That sounds low.
That sounds low. Well, let's say it's 80%, right?
Sounds very low.
So you get into fights with family, with friends, and for the kids, it's not a good thing. My daughter was saying, yeah, I could buy any clothing I want. I don't have to think about it. So I said to her, do you think that's good for you, that you can buy whatever you want with no discretion and you can just do whatever? Is that good for you as a person? And she said, yeah. So that was a dead end. I couldn't go further with that. So wait a few years until you mature a little bit. But after saying that, if you would offer me right now $540 million, I would take it. Why? It could be that's why I'm crazy. I would take the money if you would offer it to me, even though I know there's an 80% chance that I would ruin my life. And I hold myself to be a logical person. I believe 1 + 1 is 2. I strongly believe in that. So why then would I take the $540 million? The only comfort is I think everyone here also would take it. So if I'm crazy, everyone's crazy. Okay, fine. So everyone could come. Everyone would think I'm different.
It's like the Kohen Gadol when every year when they were corrupt and they were dying every year. Each year they came and said, "I'm different. I'm gonna."
Very good, good Sushtel. How come the house you wouldn't say that? By the roller coaster, I don't think any of us would get on the roller coaster. 1 in 100,000, I don't think we'd get on the roller coaster.
There's no control on the roller coaster. 1 in 10,000 die, you're gonna die, right?
Right.
When I get the money, there's something I can do about it. I have decision-making power.
Right. So excellent. Right. So we think that's the key, right? But I think you're right. I think that's the nakuda, is that when it comes to the roller coaster, whatever it's like a random thing. When it comes to contracting a disease, chashon, it's a random thing. When it comes to this, no, I'll be different. But 80% have a failure rate, and so. But everyone here, if someone would walk in and offer each one of us $500 million, we'd all take it. But 8 out of 10 would ruin their lives. So we think we're in control, but that's what the koyach hadimyan does. Right? There's olam haz in this world. There's a koyach of dimyan. Number one, we think that for sure $540 million would bring us happiness. I have no suffix. I don't care what the experts say, what the psychologists say. There's something called, Johnny's not here to help me out with this, hedonic adaptation. I think that's the phrase. Hedonistic adaptation, which means that a person wants happiness in life. So I think, that if I get this windfall of cash, I'll have that. But your body or your mind adapts to your new level of pleasure. Whereas if you want happiness comes from a feeling of happiness of fulfillment, whatever it might be. It's not based on a physical phenomenon. It's based on myself. In Brisker Lumbus, they always have Chakir. Is it in the Gavra or in the Chefza? Is this halacha dependent on the person or on the object, right? So is happiness dependent on the object? Does money give me happiness? Does anything in this world physically give me happiness? Or is it din in the Gavra, in the person? Certain people are happy, their disposition is that of being happy. Whatever happens to them, they're always happy. They've done studies with people who have been in these horrible accidents and now are paraplegics, people who win the lottery, and then just regular people. And they found that the happiness doesn't really increase in any one of these groups. If one goes into life happy, he'll come out of life happy, whatever happens to him. Obviously there are extreme cases. We have to cut out the 10% on either side. So the 80% in the middle. If a person has a happy disposition, whatever happens, yes lottery, no lottery, he'll be happy. And if a person is prone to not being happy, even with the lottery, he won't be happy. That's the dimion, that's the fantasy that our Yetzer Hara creates for us. We think that if I had this, then I would be happy. So in that sense, I guess there is a level of insanity there. But at least, like they say, there's two types of people in an insane asylum. There are those who know they're crazy and those who don't know they're crazy. Who has a better chance of getting out? People who know they're crazy. At least we're aware that we have this dimion and we can deal with it properly as Hashem. Just a thought from the Yonah Diyono. Okay, continuing now in the Mesillas Yesharim. So we're up to Perek Vav, moving fast. The Midah of Zrizis. We finished last week the Midah of Zehirus, which we said was a business plan. Making a business plan, defining what's good, what's bad. One of my actions now, are they good or bad? The ones that are good, strengthen the ones that are bad. I have to change them into good ones or eliminate them. Now we get into the Midah of Zrizis. Zrizis is, as they translate, alacrity. The Mesillas Yesharim defines Zrizis as how a person is makdim to a mitzvah and how he finishes them. Right? So Zrizis has no connection to the actual wrapping one's arm with tefillin or the actual davening Shemona Esrei. Zrizis is how do I approach a mitzvah, and once I'm doing it, what's the speed with which I fulfill it? Not that you do a mitzvah quickly, but a person makes sure that once he's involved in the mitzvah, he actually does it and doesn't let time get involved and he loses it. So Zrizis is not the actual key in mitzvah, it's how I approach the mitzvahs. And it's approaching a mitzvah quickly, it's running to do the mitzvah. Says the Mesillas Yesharim, there are two reasons why we are not zaras. Why we wake up in the morning, we don't run to shul, there's an opportunity for chesed, we're not running to the hospital to visit the sick. But there are various reasons, things that hold us back from being a zaris, from running and doing a mitzvah. One is the evil inclination, you have the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara doesn't just try to get us to do averos, to do transgressions, to eat the cheeseburger. It also tells us, slow down, don't run, it's not that important, it'll wait, it'll be there tomorrow. So we have to realize that. Secondly, there's something called teva adam. There's something called a person's, way we're made. Our teva, our nature. And our nature, human nature, is that a person likes to be lazy, a person likes to be, to stagnate, just to relax and take it easy. A person does not like toreach and malacha. A person doesn't like to work hard. It's against our nature. The Mesillas Yesharim.
Yetzer is not part of teva because Yetzer leave adam ram nura. Like
it is part of teva, you're saying.
Yeah, it's
right.
One and the same.
Right. So he breaks up into two. The Mesillas Yesharim has the Yetzer Hara as like an outside force, but it's internal, but somewhat of an outside force, like making us do things, convincing us, and then just the nature of the person. But you're right. Yetzer lev adam ram and urav. From the beginning, we have the Yetzer Hara, so it could be one and the same on some level. The Mesillas Yesharim quotes a pasuk in Mishlei. Gam misrapim b'malachtoi achul lebal mashlas. A person who doesn't do what he's supposed to do with alacrity, with zrizis, that's the brother of destruction. In other words, we think that destruction is eating a cheeseburger. Destruction is hitting someone. We're doing an actual avera. Says Shlomo Melech in Mishlei that not being a zar is being lazy is also destruction. That causes destruction. And he goes on to give a parable of a field that a person was given a field to cultivate and he just sat but did nothing and then it was overgrown, and that's a form of destruction. If I don't act and do what I'm supposed to do, that leads to destruction. It's a form of destruction, but it's more subtle. It doesn't seem as bad as taking a hammer and breaking a window, but being an also, when a person's lazy, it's really essentially the same thing. But that's the type of a person, and therefore one has to be very, very careful about that. Says the Mesillas Yesharim that Atzlus leads a person to not feel fulfilled. The person has something that he knows he has to do. He has to take care of something. But he does it begrudgingly. He's not going to enjoy it. Similar to what you said before with the lottery, right? That a person's approach to something will decide if he's fulfilled by it. So if I begrudgingly do something, I'm not going to enjoy it. So a person, when it comes, he doesn't really enjoy davening. Okay? So he comes and he goes, and he's going to build up a resentment. He's not going to be efficient or proficient in it. And one thing leads to the next, and he's going to throw the whole thing away. A person doesn't learn Torah, he doesn't enjoy it, and the laziness, and that affects how a person does the mitzvah, and then it goes off. So that's what person has to be very careful when it comes to that. Atzlus also, Shalom Melech says in Mishlei, that the Atzel has a lot of reasons to justify his Atzlus. That's where the Yetzer Hara comes in. I remember when I was moving from Eretz Yisrael to Australia, we were in Toronto for 2 weeks, and then New Jersey for 2 weeks. And obviously it's very tumultuous because I was very busy with different things, and I realized I can fill my whole day with things that I have to do. But if I would take out a half hour and learn, somehow all those things would get done, but I would have a half hour to learn, or an hour to learn, whatever it was. So we have to be careful, we have to realize that Atzlus isn't just, I have nothing to do but learn, I sit back on my couch and do nothing. Atzlus can be, that is also Atzlus. But Atzlus is also when I have to go to the bank. And I have to do there's so many things I have to do. But really, deep down, there's a certain Atzlus, a certain laziness that is justifying my lack of involvement in Torah and mitzvahs. And if I can find the 5 minutes, or the half hour, or the 2 hours to be involved in Torah and mitzvahs, all that would get done as well. So the Atzel is not just an overt laziness, but it's also justifying not being involved in Torah and mitzvah, which is much more subtle, much more dangerous. So that is the definition of zrizas, and the force that is, keneged, that's going against the zrizas, is that Yetzer Hara, as well as the person's nature of being lazy, and that is Perek Vav. That is when it comes to Atzlus, to zrizas. Now, okay, so that is defining zrizas, but we always want to be practical. And Perek Zayin is Bibir Chelke has zrizas. What are the elements of being a zar? Is the elements of alacrity? How does a person become one? So again, we have a similar thing by Zahirus. It's before the action and during the action. Before the action, says the Mesillas Yesharim, a person has to realize once the obligation comes my way, don't leave any time. Run and do it, because there are many, many things, many distractions that can come up in between my realization that a mitzvah is, I have an obligation to perform a mitzvah, and the actual performance of the mitzvah. So once I realize that I have to make a phone call to a friend who's not feeling well, don't say, well, let me first, I'll first, go to the gym and then I'll come back and make the phone call afterwards. We have to realize, once the mitzvah comes, we have to chop on it very quickly. If not, it might run away. He brings an example from yesterday's parsha, from Parshas Vayera. A person should always run to do a dvar mitzvah. The one night that Lot's older daughter went before the younger daughter, so she got the merit of her offspring becoming part of the Melucha, of the kingdom of Malchus Beis David, a few generations earlier. So in their minds, they were doing a mitzvah, right? They thought the whole world was destroyed. Olam Chesed Yibana, Cain and Hevel married their sisters, right? So in order to save the world, that act is permitted. So it was a big mitzvah in their eyes. The Ramban seems to praise them for it. They did a good thing. They didn't know that there was still civilization existing. But the older one is the one who was Zara. She did it first. She was rewarded. So Zrizim Akim the mitzvah, he quotes the Gemara Pesachim. L'olam yoretz adam l'dvar mitzvah. A person should run to a mitzvah even on Shabbos. Okay. So that's the big mile of being a Zara of Zrizis. And says the Mesillas Yesharim, we normally think that we get reward for the kiyum ha-mitzvah, for the fulfillment of the mitzvah. Says the Mesillas Yesharim that we get reward also for the way in which we approach the mitzvah. So you have two people putting on tefillin. One guy does it, he rolls out of bed, and he gets up early, but he doesn't go to davening until 2.5 hours later. He puts on his tefillin, very mahudr, the mamish the best tefillin. The other guy jumps out of bed, realizes he has a mitzvah, runs to put on his tefillin. Hashem, when he gives us a grade on that mitzvah, doesn't just look at how mahudr the tefillin are. He looks at what was the context that we fulfill the mitzvah in. And if a person was zaris, he gets a reward for that as well. So it's important to keep in mind. The second element of zrizis is during the mitzvah. A person has to make sure that once he starts the mitzvah, he finishes the mitzvah. The Chazal have very strong language about a person who begins the mitzvah and doesn't finish it, he buries his wife and children. That's what the Gemara says. A very strong sentiment of Chazal. The importance of once I began the mitzvah, there's a responsibility I have to finish the mitzvah. Then he ends off with an unbelievable insight into human nature. And he says, and again, this goes back to our point of Gavra Chefza, of happiness, of fulfillment. Where does a person feel fulfilled? Is that dependent on the thing I'm involved in, or is that dependent on me? Says the Mesillas Yesharim, if a person has a desire for Torah mitzvahs, that'll automatically disreason. Whatever I feel is important to me, I'm automatically zars. If my business is very important to me, I don't need a musar shmooze to get up early in the morning. My brother works for a hedge fund, and the owner, the main guy there, he gets a phone call every morning, I think between 2 and 3 a.m., to get a briefing on the Asian markets. And the phone call can last 15 minutes, half hour, 45 minutes. The guy never misses that phone call. He does not need a musar shmooze to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to receive that phone call, because even though I think that last I checked it was $1.5 billion hedge fund, right? He doesn't really need the money, but he built this malchus, this malucha, this whole chashva company, and it's very important to him that it goes weiter. He does not need a musar shmooze to get up at 2:30 in the morning, right? So he's a zariz because it's important to him. So if we find ourselves not being zariz, it's because our Torah mitzvahs are not as important as his hedge fund. So how do we make it as important? What do we do? Says the Mesillas Yesharim, if we act like a zariz, even though we don't really believe it, but we run. If you would run to shul, it would become more chashuv. Our outward actions affect our pnimis, affect the inside. So I don't really, davening, it doesn't really talk to me so much. I don't really feel I'm connecting. But if I would run to shul, and then I learn the pirush, the translation of the words, and try to get into it and say, wow, even just saying davening is great, I love it, that has an effect on it. Visiting a sick person, calling a relative, someone has like a great uncle that whatever is not married and would appreciate a phone call. Wow, such an important thing to do. A person would just say that. A person would run to do a mitzvah he doesn't really enjoy, but our outer actions affect the pnimis, affect inside. So the project for this week will be to pick a mitzvah, some part of Yiddishkeit that we don't really feel connected to, or we feel connected, want to feel more connected to, and outwardly, whether it's physically running to it, saying, oh, what a great mitzvah, I can't wait to do it, and we'll see that if our physical actions push us in the way of being a zariz, we say, we don't really believe it, but we pretend to be motivated, that will affect the pnimis. That'll be our job for this week.